So they issued a statement of support for Egyptian protesters in February 2011 during the 2011 Arab Spring movement. And it says in a 4-month process ending in October 2011, the Syrian government reportedly released imprisoned Islamic radicals, providing them with arms. So that was, by the way, that was a high watch period as well that we were looking at, you might remember. And then it says more bombings in July 2012. And in April 2013, they made rapid military gains in controlling part of northern Syria. And in May 2013, the deadliest single attack of terrorism ever to take place on Turkish soil. Then in July 2013, a mass breakout of prison members in Iraq, which we'll talk about later. It says over 500 prisoners escaped, and it was described as the culmination of a 1-year campaign called Destroying the Walls. And then in August 2013, they took over an airbase. In September, they killed a commander after he intervened to protect members of a Malaysian Islamic charity. They overtook the Syrian town of Azaz. And then in November 2013, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said ISIS was the strongest group in northern Syria. And then in January 2014, Syrian rebels supposedly tried to expel ISIS from 2 cities unsuccessfully. And they announced the creation of, or ISIS announced the creation of its new Lebanese arm of supporters in Lebanon. And in February, Al-Qaeda allegedly broke off its links with ISIS to focus on removing Assad, which is helping them anyway. Then in March of this year, Iraq's prime minister accused Saudi Arabia of openly funding ISIS. In April, Iraq destroyed an ISIS convoy in Syria. And in May, the public executions and crucifixions began. And in June, they seized control of the 2nd most populous city in Iraq and looted the central bank, taking $429 million. And that was when it really started getting much more serious around this time, when we started hearing more about it in the news. Because not only did they successfully steal millions, apparently, but they started massacring thousands. And this escalation was right during our major watch period this year. So on June 11th, it says they seized the city of Tikrit, and on June 12th, the Human Rights Watch issued a statement about the growing threat to civilians in Iraq. And by June 15th, ISIS captured the city of Tel Afar and claimed that 1,700 Iraqi soldiers who had surrendered had been executed, and they released images of the mass executions. So they looted the bank right back here. Then on June 11th through the 15th, the execution of 1,700 surrendered soldiers. Right during that major watch period we were looking at, all the way back in January. And then it says ISIS captured 2 key crossings in Anbar. Syria bombed them, and Iraq had to purchase jets from Russia because of delays in the delivery from fighter jets from the U.S. Then it says Iraq launched its first airborne defense on June 26. 2 days later, the Obama administration requested $500 million to use in the training and arming of Syrian rebels. And they changed their name to the Islamic State at the end of June. And then it says on July 2nd, the Caliph of the new Islamic State allegedly said that Muslims should unite to capture Rome in order to, quote, own the world. And the next day they captured Syria's largest oil field. And on July 17th, they captured another gas field in Syria. On the 19th, they claimed responsibility for another bombing in Baghdad. And on July 24th, they blew up the tomb of the prophet Jonah. And at the end of July, they released another video of showing graphic scenes of mass executions. And that escalation during July, involving the capture of oil and gas fields, that occurred during the 70th anniversary of the Bretton Woods Conference, which founded the IMF, which was the first order of business for the beast. So their statement about capturing Rome, quote unquote, occurred on the first day of that 70th anniversary. And they captured Syria's largest oil field the next day. So July 2nd and 3rd during True Shavuot. And the destruction of Jonah's tomb occurred on Noah's 40th day from the true anniversary of the start of Noah's flood. So remember, this was our major watch date because in 2014, the timeline starting at the 777 point drop in the stock market that happened in 2008, it ended exactly on the true anniversary of the start of Noah's flood reign. That was based on this right here. I have a video on it from back in February. And also because of the other chart that we were looking at back in February that included the 14th and the 15th. So that's why we were watching those dates. And like I said, that's when ISIS started their mass executions, at least of the Iraqi soldiers. They executed 1,700 of them right during that time period frame. So that's another major event. There were several things that went on during that watch period, but that was one of them. And the actual date that Noah's flood reign started, or the anniversary of that, according to the true biblical calendar, began either on the 13th, the evening of the 13th, or the evening of the 14th. So it's always a 3-day window because we include both the new moon and the first crescent calendars, because the Bible's not really clear about whether it's the new moon or the first crescent. So the reign started on the 13th through the 15th. That's Noah's reign, and it ended and that was like I said, that was when ISIS claimed it executed 1,700 Iraqi soldiers. That was when Noah's reign started. And 40 days later, according to the biblical timeline, they blew up Jonah's tomb. Okay. And then their capture of the oil fields and the gas fields occurred again at the start of the Beast's International Monetary Fund 70th anniversary. At the start of that, that's when ISIS gained control of the oil and gas fields. And then it says they captured another oil field in Iraq on August 3rd, and on August 5th it was reported that 30 to 50,000 people in Iraq fled into the mountains. Okay, so this fleeing into the mountains was reported on August 5th, right here. But it doesn't say when it actually started. But it was reported right here. And the reason I thought that was interesting is that's during the time period of the Abomination of Desolation that stood in 2012 right here. And 2 days later, the dropping of the American flag at the Olympics on Obama's birthday. Both of these events were significant dates because, like I said, August 2nd was the day the Idol of Terror was lifted into place, and August 4th was the 7th Shabuah from the UN vote to create Israel. So I just want to, I need to say this really quick because a lot of people don't understand what this chart is about right here. The entire book of Daniel, this whole section right here is what a lot of people have a problem with because it talks about Obama. But what I really want to explain just really quick is that Daniel 9, which is what this is about right here, Daniel 9 is not about Jesus, okay? I challenge anybody right now who disagrees to ask any Jewish rabbi if Daniel 9 is about Jesus. They're going to tell you no, and they're right. And I made a video about this. It's called, Is the Standard Christian Doctrine of 70 Weeks Flawed? I think that's what it's called. I'll try to remember to link it below. But the standard Christian doctrine of the 70th week of Daniel is seriously flawed. It is illogical, and I'll show you why. I don't have time to show you why. I showed you why in that video, and I'll try to remember to leave a link below, but I'm just going to point out a few things right here. And there are plenty of others explaining it. But the only thing in Daniel 9 that may refer to Jesus is the anointing of the most holy after 70 Shabuah. Right here. Possibly. But the rest of it does not fit the Jesus timeline. So, I mean, if you can prove it to me, then by all means try. But the doctrine that I examined about this is seriously flawed. Because Daniel 9 clearly says the destruction will occur in the midst of the week. And that did not happen in Jesus' time, according to the timeline most scholars adhere to. I mean, most scholars agree Jesus lived in here and died before the destruction of the temple in 70 CE. So the whole Daniel 9 timeline does not refer to Jesus. Like I said, the only part of it that might refer to Jesus, or that even could refer to Jesus, is the 70 Shabuah part, which is in verse 24. The rest of it, verses 25 through 27, do not match the timeline of Jesus. So this timeline right here in Daniel 9, it's not referring to Jesus. It's not talking about Jesus. It's talking about a man living in the end time, a leader who is called Messiah, who makes a covenant with the beast that causes the destruction during that man's reign. It's a period of 7 years. And all of Daniel is written in code, all of it. So why would one tiny little word right here be literal when the rest of the book of Daniel, every other word in the whole book of Daniel, is symbolic? Why would one tiny word be literal but everything else symbolic? Because this word is not literal. It's code. And these events are happening right now, and I've proved that. I have a video, it's called Daniel 9 Fulfilled in 2009, and it's linked below, where I explain everything in detail. So if there's anything in here, if you're looking at this and you say that doesn't look right or that doesn't look right, I'm asking you, I'm begging you, please watch the proof for it. Watch the logical proof that I've put out in that video that explains everything in detail and proves that Daniel 9 is being fulfilled and that we are in the midst of that 7-year period right now. It has nothing to do with Jesus. It's not referring to Jesus, okay? So I just had to say that real quick. So the August 2nd date right here and the August 4th date were major fulfillment dates of Daniel 9 and Daniel 12. And August 4th was the partial fulfillment of Daniel 9:25, and August 2nd was the fulfillment of Daniel 12:11. I also have a video on that as well, so check that out. That's linked below because I don't have time to go into it now. But that's where this chart came from. It was based on the 3 fulfillments, major fulfillments of Scripture in 2012. And this chart right here is what allowed... this is what allowed us to foresee the revealing that came up when Pope Benedict announced his resignation on February 11th, because February 11th was a major date on this chart. So, I mean, why is that? Probably because it was based on these fulfillments in 2012, and those fulfillments are true. They really did happen. They're major fulfillments. So, right here, starting on the fulfillment of August 2nd, which was quote-unquote the Abomination of Desolation Daniel talks about, which we've talked about before. It was the idol of terror that was placed on that date, exactly according to everything, all the scriptures tied in with it. If we counted that as the first day of the 7th month, if we counted that as the trumpets of that year, then we'd have the red timeline right here, which gave us the first day of Sukkot on August 5th of 2013. And that's just something that, like I said, we were looking at the alignments of these dates. And I think that's interesting because on August 5th, they reported that 30 to 50,000 people fled into the mountains the following year. And that's directly associated to the Abomination of Desolation, because that's what Jesus talks about. He said they will flee into the mountains when they see the Abomination of Desolation. Okay, so I'm going to have to start part 3 right here, and the link is below. Okay.